What do you think of the situation for Muslims in France today?
Well, we have to be quite careful when talking about Islamophobia because in some ways this idea relates to the classic concept of racism. That is, you could say that Islamophobia is the continuation of anti-Arab, anti-immigrant racism. So, in that sense, the classic form of racism is Islamified, but at the same time, behind this Islamicized racism is a heightened focus on the question of Muslims in France. So in effect, Islamophobia is something quite complex. I mean, you could say that it is simply anti-Muslim feeling, and leave it at that, or that it is the legacy of anti-Arab feeling. But in reality, it is the classical form of racism toward the foreigner, the immigrant, and the children of immigrants, mixed with a tension, a fear of Islam. And all these ingredients mixed together, producing the phenomenon known as Islamophobia. Today, many Muslims in France are French. They've completed their education here, they're lawyers, doctors, sometimes politicians in the traditional parties, like Nicolas Sarkozy's party or the Socialist Party. Yet, despite all the proof that they are French, we consider them not to be French. If Islamophobia were directed towards those Muslims who were foreigners, that would be one thing. It wouldn't be very good, but at least then we could say that it would be an example of traditional xenophobia. But no! Today's Islamophobia affects French Muslims, and always we suspect that they're not completely French. We call that double allegiance. Yes, they're French, but they're loyal to another community or a foreign country, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia. There's always that suspicion that they're French, but not totally. So basically, they're not considered as French as everyone else. When you walk down the street here in France, perhaps you think that, well, there's less social and ethnic division than there is in the United States. And in fact, there's an excellent mixing going on here. There are black men with white girlfriends, there are French people of North African origin with French people of all other backgrounds. So, you see that there's a lot of mixing in this society. But at the same time, there is also permanent suspicion when people realize that you're Muslim or the friend of a Muslim. Even though you show all the traits of being French, your life's here, and you like this country. You're like every other Frenchman, but there's always that suspicion that you're French, but not completely. Today's France is really focused on the issue of identity. There's an obsession with national identity. What does it mean to be French? It goes so far as to say, oh, you have to talk like this, and you have to dress like that, and so on. And a big part of Islamophobia isn't so much the issue of this being a secular nation, but that issue is often used to develop a nationalist, xenophobic, and sometimes racist sentiment.
You mentioned extremists. Have there been many instances of the police arresting Islamic extremists in France?
There are radicals, but they're not really a danger to national security so much as they're a psychological danger to those they spend time with. But you could say the same about certain Christian or neo-Buddhist sects, for example. There are radical sects in every movement. The situation here is not like in England. In London, there are those individuals who preach and who are anti-Western. In France, that's very, very rare. The worst discourse that you're likely to get here is one that's very traditional, against women, pro-polygamy, saying that Western values are bad. It's a more morality-based criticism.
But what will the future bring? With media problems in England and Islamophobia certainly on the rise in France, the months and years ahead look bleak. Maybe, as Taibu said, all this playing with matches will backfire and everything will go up in flames. Or maybe not. Is Islamophobia justified? Or do Muslims just want peace like everybody else? Do they strive for understanding and acceptance? We can listen to the stories of Muslims. We can tell family and friends what we believe. But what about tomorrow?
I'm at the fore of criticising British government and British policy. However, I think the people of Britain, what some nationalists might have called indigenous, but I'll just say white, I would say they're quite respectful and tolerant on the whole. They might have slightly bigoted views or slightly ignorant of certain things, but again, this is down to the way the press perceive issues and things.
The future is going to be hard for Muslims in France. We know that Islamophobia is fear of Muslims, But one consequence of this is that Muslims become scared, and that's important to remember.
It's the younger generations that are important, and that are the ones that hopefully won't believe in everything they hear in the media.
The vast majority of the campaign in my support was led by people who were not Muslims, people who were just average English and British students and academics and activists and general members of the community, and that's the reason I'm still here. Ultimately, they represent in my mind the real Britain.
I think we'll be okay because we have faith in God.
I don't really think there's that much of a difference between like what religion you are, like how we live our lives and stuff. I think that we're just people.
Do you think people are going to be able to get on? Do you think it's going to get worse?
Everything could be really peaceful, but it's not something that's going to like happen overnight. It's going to take years,
Yeah.
and I think there'll always be. You can't drum into everybody to think that all Muslims are good, because it is a good religion, but there'll always be a few people who have like a distorted view of it. But I think with time, most people will be okay with Islam and being in this country, and also
We are friendly, and that we don't mean any harm. We just want to practice our faith.
I'm of the opinion that I was born in France, so this is my country. We have no hostility towards France.
You know, what is great about this country are the traditions of, openness, respect for freedom of belief.
I get the impression that it's like a kid who plays with matches. I light it, I play, and maybe one day the curtains will catch on fire.
Britain's going to be great. I think it's been really, really good. I see the future's brilliant for everyone living in harmony.